Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the nonprofit Tech Shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 14 now already of RevOps Loop podcast with myself, Maarten and Stjepan. So today's topic, a bit more of a, again, in the trenches story sharing topic. The idea is we want to go through some of the worst, some of the best RevOps CRM setups that we've seen, things that we find very innovative, that were kind of eye-opening, others that were just structurally wrong, and things that we can learn from as well. I just want to go through a couple of these examples of things that we've seen in recent years and what we can learn from them. So, Stjepan, what do you think? You want to start with the bad ones, the good ones? Maybe the bad ones are more fun.
I think I would like to start with probably like the bad one, but probably one of the baddest that I saw. And to give more context to our audience, that was probably a year and a half ago. I needed to do an audit, then also talk to stakeholders, and it was I think a couple of pro tiers, and then an enterprise tier. I think like a marketing enterprise or something.
You're talking HubSpot, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm talking HubSpot. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, basically HubSpot. Yeah. So why bad and why one of the baddest? Because what I got from the briefings and auditing is that not like everyone was an owner. So there was a couple of people that said they were admins, but then they were also doing their own thing. Then also anybody from the sales or marketing teams were doing whatever they think it's good for their CRM, what's good for their day-to-day workflow. And why is that bad? Somebody will say but that's not bad. They're using it. Yes, they're using it, but they're using it very similarly. So I discovered there were 15 same properties differently named, created by different people that were collecting data on one of the most important call to actions, forms. There was also different criteria when there was a lead created, when somebody needed to enroll somebody in a sequence, when are we segmenting people and to what content they were segmented, because the property was similar. They were using different properties to segment. The list was not correct. You can say the content for a customer was the same for a contact from a top of the funnel prospect. So I think that's one of the baddest. And I think the baddest because you have all of these tools, people are using it, but then it's so not good usage of everything that you have at your disposal.
I feel like it's a classic one, right? The multiple properties, right? The general problem there being there's not one clear owner. Everyone can go into a CRM, become a quote unquote expert. Creating properties and stuff is not that complex at all. But as a result, you end up with exactly that, right? The folks just creating their own. And then as a result, you can't really create any kind of lists or things that actually use the data accurately.
Yeah, and I think that was the time where you didn't have the seats model you now have in HubSpot. So basically everybody could be an admin. Everybody can have what we now call a core seat. Everybody could create properties, not only view them. So they could edit them.
So it was hard to protect against that.
Yeah. So I think the new model, as much as it's maybe some extra cost for bigger organizations, I think it prevents that issues. So I would just tie the two together because now you can say, okay, these are the core seats. These are my drivers. These are the people that know what they need to do with the help of an expert or a dedicated team.
And we shouldn't be creating properties.
Yeah, and not everybody should do workflows, create a handoff trigger, whatever. We need to have that tied, and we need to know who has access to do that, because that that also prevents other issues. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
my story real
Kind of,
quickly. Yeah.
as I say, kind of similar to that is, and again, this is, I'm trying to think, was this in one use case? No, this has been multiple times over. But along those same lines is these import heavy CRMs that you get into. It's a similar kind of issue, meaning there's just data gets into the CRM by way of import, and multiple people are importing. And only recently we have a current client now where there's more than 150 imports that have happened over the last 2 years or so. 150 imports. There's some uniformity across them, meaning the core properties seem to be the same ones through every import, but definitely not all. And so there were several imports where they were importing, for example, contacts from a call campaign. So they had called everyone up and they had answered a bunch of questions, and it was a nice sheet with a bunch of responses. And then someone uploaded that, obviously just creating properties for each of the different question responses, and those just kind of lived there. And then there would also be properties in there, including the contact warmth, essentially how likely is this contact to convert in this case. But again, just a completely made up new property, didn't align with contact lifecycle stages or lead scores or anything like that. It's just this random thing. And so you can imagine 150 imports without any regulations, bunch of puzzling that needed to be done. Now, the good thing is that's a recent example where this was also HubSpot, and within HubSpot now you have also these smart properties which really help. It's still a lot of puzzling to do, but they help pulling a lot of this information together. So like different properties kind of contain the same information. They need to be brought to one uniform property. Using these smart properties helps a lot, where it's just like read the job title in these 6 different places and then assess what the actual job title is and put it in this one uniform property. That wasn't the same thing there. That wasn't the case even 2 years ago. You didn't have that. So back then it was, you just had to export all the data, manually go through, set up some algorithms, use some third party tools to try and help clean it up. Luckily, it's gotten a lot better now, but it's still, as soon as I see imports, I get a little bit of a headache proactively of just, things can go wrong so quick with these manual imports, especially if multiple people are doing them. So I think that's the first one, kind of along the same lines of yours, where it's uncontrolled CRM usage, whether it's imports or property creation, that leads just to such a mess that is hell to clean up. Luckily, modern CRMs now have a lot of these tools and features that kind of help you puzzle that data together and make
Yeah.
sense of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the unique identifier, like additional one next to the emails that HubSpot allows you to do, is also one that like
Yep.
helped a lot in the recent times. Like my other story to like get ahead of like properties is probably just like a good CRM, but not a lot of customization to it. So like
Okay.
the data is getting collected okay, like there can be some optimizations like to like map up all the channels, who needs to who is collecting what and why. Like we have property groups, we yeah, like everything is good, let's say that was okay. But like then like people are not seeing that data because there were not like teams set up, there were not custom views. Nobody didn't know that we can do conditional views and more. So like the sales was getting lost and just complaining like I don't see if this is a lead
Yeah.
status that I need to call them. Like I don't see where I can sort by the most recent activity. So like people
Yeah.
were not knowing the possibilities, and I don't think that's a big issue. I think it's most of like whoever did it before they reach out to us was like
Yeah.
just learning like new stuff and
Yeah.
didn't know how to do it correctly, and
Yeah.
then I would just tie that one to making sure that like you have internal stuff presented to teams, like what's the possibility of any of CRM platforms you're using, to make sure that anybody using it understands how and what can be used.
I
So
feel like that's a
yeah.
good indicator of good CRM usage as well is if they do have different views for different teams. So if a sales or a marketing or customer success logs into the portal and they have a different view set up for them, usually, at least when I'm logging into a portal and seeing that, that's usually a good indication of, all right, they have a grasp on not only the data and where it lives and how it needs to be structured, but who needs what level of data. So it's one of those things where it's not the most exclusive feature, right? In any CRM, right? You can customize views per teams. But at least in my experience, I'm trying to think of a bad CRM setup, like a really bad CRM setup that did have custom views, and I can't think of any. Most of the time, if you have that, that's a good indication that, all right, you're in control of your data. You're showing the right information to the right people. But that's usually a green flag, as you'd say. If
Yeah.
you're seeing a sales view and a marketing view set up, yeah, that's usually a great sign.
Yeah. So like imagine I do remember one where we there was like a customer success like person, only one that needed to be like on point of the accounts, but they didn't even know that they can use the shared inbox. So like they just like wanted to have a list of their contacts that are like customers so they can reach out to them every 2 weeks and see what emails they logged. And they were logging it one by one. Nobody like they needed to click a lot, go through that. They didn't have a like a inbox or connected where they can easily reply, see
Right.
what's the issues, what's the pain. So that like that is also like one of the issues for with in that account that I saw. But like what's the next horror story that you can share?
I think okay. So kind of shifting gears a little bit. Another typical one, and this one was about 3 years ago, is essentially a forced setup where we had HubSpots running, and then essentially the head of sales got a deal on SalesLoft, and so we were going to use SalesLoft. Why did we need it? Not really, but it was just something that we got. And first of all, the amount of just wasted resources of just setting up that integration, it works, but it's a little bit of a tricky one. SalesLoft, HubSpot, they don't always play nice with each other, so it's a little tricky to get that to work. First of all, second of all, it wasn't even really needed, right? The setup there was that any kind of outbound sales was happening through SalesLoft, and then obviously needed to be reflected in HubSpot. And then HubSpot was the inbound machine. So in theory, you think, okay, great. You didn't really need to do that. You can do outbound sales through, in this case, HubSpot perfectly. Yeah, we can also just have everything in SalesLoft, but forcing the usage of the two just led to so many, first of all, integration errors and things that we constantly ran into. And then not all the sales activities were being pushed into HubSpot, so that needed to be reconfigured. And that was one where, gosh, that was on and off almost 2 years, I would say, of fighting that integration, and then eventually we just got rid of SalesLoft. Luckily, not that SalesLoft's not a great tool; works perfectly fine. It's just there was no real use case for it. It was a forced integration because I guess someone got pitched and got convinced that they needed it. One or two shiny features that SalesLoft had that HubSpot didn't, but that were not crucial whatsoever. I believe in this case it was, and it's been some time ago now, but I believe in this case it was some of the automated LinkedIn outreach that could be automated in a SalesLoft sequence, but not in HubSpot sequence. Again, is this crucial? No. The juice was not worth the squeeze, as they say. So definitely a bad example. Definitely a learning lesson. I know we've addressed this on several occasions, right? That whole shiny object syndrome. Like don't overcomplicate setups. You probably don't need as many tools as you think. And this was just a great example of that, of just going through
Yeah.
this endless rabbit hole of trying to find an integration that worked good enough but wasn't needed in the first place. Yeah.
When you said like the LinkedIn outreach that's better in SalesLoft than HubSpot. Like before I go to another story, I just think like there's a lot of requests for people like what to use to get better LinkedIn outreach. Like and we all know there's a couple of tools out there, like I don't know, Surf or Hub Lead or whatever. But
Mm.
like I'm also just like why doesn't HubSpot like just acquire somebody and builds that into the sequences? I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a client that the only thing that was needed for them was like sales sequences and making sure that they have all the conversations from LinkedIn, that they can do some automations from LinkedIn in a sequence. And I would also
Mhm.
like to have that instead of like adding another tool.
Right.
And that's just like I
Right.
went off topic, but like that's like my thinking. Okay, we now have
Yeah.
areas that was org chart hub. We have like it's now on the enterprise tier, but like why don't we upgrade the sequences? I know we now have a prospecting agent. We have multi-sequence touches, A/B testing, but I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest benefits would be to have that. I don't know,
Yeah.
natively in HubSpot, so you
It
can
would.
like trigger off of like did my connection request was accepted or not, how many of
Yeah.
successful outreaches that I did were connected or responded, so I can know, okay, this template that I use works for this job roles for this industry. So yeah,
Yeah.
just like went off topic, but I
No,
think
but
that's
I agree
something
with
that you
that. And
sparked.
yeah, and it is like I said, to follow that train of thought, right? Is if there is a specific feature like that, right? Like, hey, I'm using HubSpot, I'm happy with it. One thing I would have loved is if the LinkedIn automations uh, were better. Okay, there's probably, like you mentioned, there's a ton of tools that plug into HubSpot quite nicely that can help you with just that, right? There are smaller tools that can help you with just that. You don't need to link to completely different CRMs to each other if the only real feature or benefit that you're trying to get is, in this case, LinkedIn messages, right? So I guess that, again, sort of
Yeah.
the learning there is, like, do your homework. You don't always need the big enterprise level tools. If you already have a specific tech stack and it fits 90% of what you want to do, what's the most efficient way to get that additional 10%? And looking at how well certain tools integrate with each other is probably a good starting point. So, like, hey, if you're trying to get this from a tool that doesn't integrate all too well or all too easy with your existing tech stack, maybe push that down the priority list, so you don't get caught up in these integration cycles. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the horror story for me. Number three is like I was auditing a portal and it was okay. Let me see what they have connected, integrated, and it was like I don't know, 30 plus. Some of them showing issues. Some of them were like connected, and I was like asking on a workshop, like, "Do you know your tech stack?" Oh yeah, we just use this and this, and I was like, "No, you have 30 tools connected." Like, oh, we didn't know that, and nobody know why were they connected. Most of them, what the data are they pushing to HubSpot and why, who is using that data, and it was like just like a I don't know, set and forget. And it's not a horror story until you see that some of the tools were like overriding what they collected to HubSpot directly,
Mhm.
and they were like using that from the another tool that maybe somebody didn't manage for like last 6 months or something.
Mhm.
And especially when there was like they were dependent on that data, and they thought that
Mhm.
like everything that was in HubSpot is connected directly to HubSpot. So
Right.
that's the story. I was like, okay, but you have like Salesforce, and it's like just like prefer Salesforce. Yeah, we know that, but like then you have this, I don't know, Google Sheet connection that is also like pushing the data, and yeah, a lot of like
Yeah.
tools that nobody didn't even know they're connected to HubSpot because it's now so easy to connect. Like probably most of them are native, and somebody just like played around and they didn't disconnect it or delete it or flag to somebody. This is
Yeah.
this is on like
Yeah. It's another one of those, right? Of get a clear CRM admin really assigned, have one person or a team overlooking this, right? So you can set up those guardrails. It is important. No, but I'd say let's dive into then maybe some green flags. I don't know what the exact title of this episode is going to be. Green flags and horror stories, a little bit of a mix of those two, but some cool examples, some good setups, things that we've seen, things that were either been innovative or just good usage of features. Um, the first one that came to mind on my side, it's not a crazy, it's not a super innovative one. It just, if executed well, it's great. Is a very clean expansion pipeline. What I mean by that is, in this case, it was for a SaaS company, so they had their platform. That platform was then also linked to the CRM and was sending basic signals back to the CRM, like last login date, number of users, the number of features that their users were actually using, etc. And then all of that was feeding into a separate pipeline in their CRM, their expansion pipeline, which was essentially flagging constantly potential churn risks, right? Expansion opportunities. And it was not overly complicated, it was just well set up. There were some basic triggers, like if there is no login for more than 8 days, a little churn risk notification would get popped up, right? That deal would move to potential churn risk. Customer success gets notified. They keep an eye on it. They reach out, etc. Vice versa, if more than 3 users were added within a week, potential upsell, right? They might need to move to a different packaging tier, etc. And so it was just a very well set up, not overly complex integration between their platform and their CRM, sending only the data through that was relevant, login data, number of users, features used, relatively basic pipeline, right? That was just, I forget what the exact terminology was, but it was something along the lines of happy clients, potential churn risk, expansion opportunity, and there were 1 or 2 more like feature expansion, etc. And this was used by their customer success team on a daily basis. I just thought it was a great example of going that one step further than just having your regular pipeline and then having your endless list of customers in that last column there, having that linked to an expansion pipeline. Obviously, it looks different depending on your industry, right? If you are working in a SaaS company and you're able to connect your actual platform with the CRM, that's great because you can get that information in there. If you're more of a services agency, et cetera, things are slightly different, right? It would be a bit more manual inputs that you need to put in there. But I do think it's generally a good idea to, like, hey, if you have take care of your pre-pipeline automations and setups first. But if you have all your clean data set up a good expansion pipeline. It had so many benefits, and their churn rate was ridiculously low because they were able to just jump on things as soon as
they were preventing churn by just doing a simple setup in HubSpot, as you said, like executing well.
Yeah.
I really do think that everybody should like learn from this story that you just shared, is like, because usually you don't need to overcomplicate it. It's like, what's the most important data that we need to bring? How do we bring it in the most simplest way? And who needs to see it? And what are the, like, maybe some things that we can know the variables, know the triggers, know the scores that we can then surface to our teams when they log into the platform. And I think that's that's usually the win. Like, and then build on top of that, but like, don't overcomplicate with, let's do 5 of these external apps that can monitor our app and what people are doing. Like, I don't think that you need to start there.
To add to that point is in that same integration between the tool and the platform, like what some other possibilities were that we actually set up initially, but then got rid of, were data points like we could send in heat maps where we could see who on where exactly in their platform were they navigating. There were then also like some click trackers to see exactly how they were clicking, etc. All cool stuff. Typical fancy object syndrome could have kicked in where you're like, oh my God, we can have that all in HubSpot. Great. But then there was that common sense of, does this actually tell us something in terms of expansion possibilities, etc.? Not really. It's interesting information to have. And on occasion, you'll want to set up these deep dives to go into, platform user experience. And that's where you want to look at these heat maps and click tracking, etc. But it was one of those great calls of, again, not making this process overly complex, not adding too many data points in there, even though the option is there. Like, let's not throw heat maps into the expansion pipeline and all of that. Not really relevant there. We limit that sync to what we need: number of users added, login information, features used. That's it.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's
that reminds me to like like take me back like a year ago when we had somebody coming and saying like we need to rebuild the website, or because like, and then the ask was like why it's just not working, and like you have HubSpot, okay, but you have do you know about like Hotjar? Like you can connect it to HubSpot and you can see where people are exiting your website, where they're clicking and more. So like you can get that data before you invest into just like rebuild it. Like you can collect data and then let's rebuild it, but let's rebuild it on the real data that we have insights to. And that's something sometimes the like the consulting that you need to do
yeah,
to like say, okay, yeah, let's rebuild it, but like on what data? Is that your just an assumption it's not working, or it's in like the CMS is not the one that you want to use, like it's slow, whatever. Like, do you have a data? No. So let's collect the data and let's do it on that. And that ties to the like what you said, like custom app events, whatever happened. Like, okay, we can then improve our customer service based on what we know. Like if there's a like login, like last login 10 days ago, and then every time that it was like 12-day they churn, let's have a template for a customer success service to
right.
like when we don't see it for 6 days they reach out and like, do you have any
Exactly.
issues, what's happened,
And
and
that's it.
not just like being proactive, not reactive. Yeah. So my good one, if I can share, is different. It's
Hmm.
basically, and me and you collaborated on that one. It was just like they wanted us to audit it and to see if they're using the best, let's say, RevOps principles in their portal. And I started doing it. It was a big one, probably most of enterprise levels, and they had like also their own app. But like what I saw there was like they had an internal deck on each of the pipelines. What creates an opportunity? What the data is collected on what stage? What's the signals that somebody needs to change ownership? Like even the like MQLs, like MQLs had their own definition that they shared internally and reshared and trained their team on. So I
Yeah,
was like, okay, that's something that I rarely see, because everybody know that they had like a, when I talk to them they say, yeah, every once in a month we have a training and we update the deck if something changes. We have internal like champion that
yeah,
all needs to update the deck every time we add something or we use a new tool in HubSpot. We train people on how to use it better, what how
yeah,
to set up, and they had clear had clear like pipeline stages. Like they had 5-6 stages, a lot of deal statuses, but like the stages are following their motion, like the deal motion. And I think that's what I love there is like
they
reinforcing,
had buy-in from
updating.
everyone. Yeah,
Yeah, everybody was like on point. And then afterwards we just concluded, I think me and you presented that, and we just like, yeah, we can work with you guys, but I think you're good. Like you reach out to
true.
whatever you think you need more information from us, but like we probably
Yeah,
90% confirmed. I think there were like little things like maybe
right.
better life cycle stages definitions, and they may be tracking multiple like intakes and forms and something that
Yeah,
they could now
and the
probably
word.
optimize when HubSpot now roll out the, you can use campaigns in workflows and associate it to contacts, deals, tickets. Now probably they will optimize that also, but like that's one a win for me when I see that type of dedication to the tool, and not a cheap tool, because you have enterprise hubs and everything like
Yeah,
that I
they
think it's
maximize.
the, and then also like, okay, we know we're doing good, but let's ask somebody external to verify
Right.
if we are doing good. I think that's like just one step ahead of everybody using the
Yeah.
tool.
No, that was in fact a good one. It's not really one that we really worked on. Like you said, we kind of went in, checked, and reviewed everything. It's like, well, you guys are doing good. And there were some small things like handoffs that could have been automated, like little tweaks. But I think what made them, so I guess like what you learned from that is, you mentioned it, right? They had that monthly recap check in with the entire team. So no one was unclear on the definitions and the pipelines. They knew this like the back of their hand. Everyone knew exactly what everything meant. What is an MQL and SQL? What are the handoffs? What are the required fields for XYZ? Just because it got so drilled down that everyone's on board there. So you avoid any of those, people going in and not finding the information or the data. Like, no, everyone's trained, everyone's used it. They also had very clear rules and guidelines set up, right? So that not everyone could go in and just make changes. So that helped a lot. And then you mentioned it as well, right? Apart from those trainings they had within their portal, explanations everywhere, right? The idea is not everyone is in this case, HubSpot expert, right? So some folks are in there every single day, others not as much. And so just having these constant clarifications, and this was in the form of notes and decks that were sort of spread out through the portal, that were always explaining what you were looking at in simple terms. And I thought that was a great idea. Like, you open a pipeline and you're okay, what exactly am I looking at? And you're looking at deals. Deals are created at this point, and they will move through there. This is the person who owns it, and we consider a deal closed when XYZ happens. So it's like, wow, clear. Like, within 30 seconds, you understand exactly what you're looking at and how to navigate it, which, yeah, I think that's a great call. Cool. I think maybe one more that I wanted to bring up as sort of a general best practice, something that we've seen that works well, is when it comes to lead scoring. I think lead scoring is something that, same thing, relatively easy to set up in most CRMs. You just kind of click, and hey, if they fill this form, they download this, set up lead scoring. What I find generally is a good best practice there, is if organizations go beyond contact level lead scoring, which is sort of the default. Stjepan is an MQL and Maarten is an SQL based on the forms they submitted, etc. But really setting up account level engagement scoring, because usually, and again, you can't really speak for all organizations, but at least 9 out of 10 that we work with, the scoring just makes more sense on a company level, right? Is a company, how much are they engaging with your content, your ads, your blogs, your assets, whatever it may be? Is it one person in that company? Is it multiple? All of that will affect how you score a company. Usually that tells you a lot more than, this one random MQL that comes in that filled out a form and that now gets chased down. It's like, this might just be a little one-off, someone from someone who filled this out. Maybe they're curious, maybe they're moving jobs and they're actually looking at it for another company. You never really know. But I think if you set up these engagement scores, lead scores on a company level, again, it's one of those that I think typically is an indication that you're not only, how do I say that? You're going to be using that lead scoring and that account scoring a lot more. And that's what I've noticed as well. Like, in those clients that we work with that have account scoring set up versus the ones that just have contact scoring set up, where are we actually using the scores on a daily, weekly basis? It's the account scores. That's what we're looking at. Is a company in the awareness stage, intent stage, etc.? How can we determine that? That does mean your scoring needs to be a little bit more complex the way it's set up, right? Because you need to track individuals within that company and then have that all be combined into one aggregated company score. So it's a little bit more complex to set up, but not overly, right? And it gives you a much more realistic view of where a specific company is at. To combine that with the worst case scenario is if you go contact scoring only, and then based on a certain score, contact becomes an MQL, etc. If you then have the automation set up that then their associated company also becomes an MQL, you end up with this database full of MQLs, and like, are they really? No one really knows. It might just be that someone filled out a form at an event somewhere, and now we're considering this company an MQL, but actually they filled out the form because we were giving away, I don't know, a Jenga puzzle that they wanted to.
Yeah.
You never know. So it doesn't really tell you much. But yeah.
And it's also like, and it's also when I know when we set up a couple of like scores, it's like, oh, let's do threshold for SQL 65 out of 100. Let's do the threshold like 75 if they're like an opportunity, whatever. It's like, okay, I think it's okay setting it up, but like after a month, you will need to review that because
Sure.
usually it's like it's not set up or get like the score should adjust it based off your the signals from the marketing team, from the sales team. Like, okay, we have, like you said, 100 MQLs, but are they MQLs? Like,
Yeah.
is that is just the score that's only sets telling you it's an MQL, or is there like when they opened an email, or if they're like sales call them, like they know they're MQLs and they're like closing them, or what's the metrics, what's the volume and whatever. So yeah, I think a good point is
So,
making sure that
yeah.
like you get the overall picture and not just like individual picture. As like you said, like somebody's
Yeah.
maybe changing a job, somebody's maybe just like wanting to get the like something that you gated because they are trying to upskill or some, and they're not
Yeah.
really somebody that wants to do business
Right.
with you. So
Right.
making sure that,
But if
and
you have
then
multiple people
yeah, yeah,
combined with then website visits, combined with research intent signals, if you're picking that up and you're plugging all of that into one company score, yeah,
yeah, then you
it's
probably can get information such as like what's the starting point when somebody like is looking to get to work with my business. What is the dropping point? Like what's the
mhm,
content that maybe is
right.
like, okay, we are at this point, but like then 5 out of 7 people read this or click this, and then all of the sudden they never engage with you again. Like what's that issue that's like driving them off from my
Yeah.
organization? So I really love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So I think we covered a lot of good and bad examples. I don't know which ones I enjoy more, right? The bad ones can sometimes be a nice challenge to pick up, but I love going into a portal and being like pleasantly surprised, like we mentioned it, right? If there's custom views set up, if there's a nice expansion pipeline, if there's an integration set up that's not overly complex and it's just set up to contain what they need. Like these are usually the ones that I don't know, I like seeing, and they're usually green flags of a good CRM RevOps strategy. So cool. With that said, Stefan, we obviously have the most important part, our beer review. I can I can kick it off this week. The one I had, I don't actually have it with me. I had it must have been a year ago now, and I'm always gonna butcher the name. I always need to read it, but it's the Hefeweiss beer, the German one, and more specifically the I need to read it. It's the Wiehenstaffner Hefeweiss beer. I just call it the Hefeweiss beer, which I think is just the type of beer it is. And then there's the name of the brewery, but the Wiehenstaffner Hefeweiss beer. It's a it's a white beer, right? It's actually really good. But what makes it especially cool is that it's supposedly, and I think verifiably, the made from the oldest brewery in the world, like 800 years old, something crazy like that, like just been around forever. Um, it's still often like considered sort of the gold standard of these Weiss beers, right? Like it is actually really good, pretty smooth. It's like 5.5%, something like that. Can sometimes be tricky to get your hands on. I know back in Belgium it's pretty available, obviously from Germany, but it is a popular one. Typical gift beer as well. So yeah, one to try out, even if it's just for the story of hey, this is from the oldest brewery in the world. Um, yeah, definitely worth a shot. How about
Okay.
you?
And I didn't try that one, so probably adding it to my
I'll,
list.
I'll send it. Yeah,
But yeah,
send you the name.
I
I'm sure they'll
I,
have it
I
in Croatian.
yeah, probably I will look for it. So I have this one. It's a pretty nice like can. It's like two. It's called Choose a Side. So if you're a funny side or like a horror side,
Yeah,
it's from Beretta Brewing Company. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. I just picked it up in a like a supermarket. It's a heavily hopped IPA, 6.7. I checked it on Untapped. It has like 3.9. I'm giving it 3.5. I think it's a solid beer, but it's a little overwhelming for me. For I know it's heavily hopped, but like 6.7. I think it's close to 7 point like something for me. I usually love heavy IPAs, but sometimes like if I do two of those, and I did two, it's enough. So I think it's something that maybe just enjoy responsibly, and that's why I'm giving it 3.9. Nothing special, just like maybe too heavily for me. But now, if you ever want to try it, try like pick it
Just for the
up,
calm
try it.
faces,
Maybe
I
it's
want to
good.
try it.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's like 270 calories. So it's like you have two of those. Probably you don't
A
need to
meal.
eat or something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Jesus. Okay. I forgot the rate mile. I'm going to follow you at 3.9 as well. Like good. Is it wow? No. But so I think we're both with a 3.9 this week.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. All right, awesome. Then yeah, I think we can close the loop on this one. It was fun to rehash some of those horror stories and green flags. As always, yeah, shoot in messages on other topics, ideas, things you want to go over, things you want to discuss. We're obviously happy to hear it. Find us both on LinkedIn, probably the easiest way.